Heavenly Father, I come before you again just to ask that you heard these requests and these things and these praises, Father. Just bless each person here in this congregation. All this I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay.
All right. Don't forget. There you go. So I feel like I need Lori to come up with you when you do announcements and translate some of the expressions you use. Like when you said we're all hungover from Friday, I was just curious what that means, because I missed the open bar. I didn't see it at all Friday. So we were tired. We're still tired from Friday, is I think what that means? Yes. And just to clarify, Art never threw me under the bus about the last announcement about the new pass. That to me implies some kind of willful, negligent, malevolent intention to hurt someone. But I think he just surprised me is what he was saying. So anyway, I did not feel thrown under the bus. So it's a good place to start too, because when you're going through, like I've been here since January, just walking with you as a church, and one of the things that I think we all want in life is something that God no longer provides for us typically. In the Old Testament, when God takes his people out of Egypt, the way that they are led is very, very clear. And I think we long for that in our lives. We wish everything were super clear. So when they were going in the daytime, what did God use to guide them and let them know they were on the right path? Anybody know? A pillar of cloud, a big column of cloud, and at night it would turn into a pillar of fire. So when you woke up in the morning and got out of your tent, if you had one, you looked at the cloud, and if it stayed, you stayed. And then if it started moving, you packed up and you started moving. And then when it stopped, you camped. And then you woke up the next day and said, are we moving today or not? Every day, the choice was just whether you were going to obey or not. It was always super, super clear what God wanted you to do. You didn't have to wonder. You just had to keep your eyes on the pillar of cloud in the day, the pillar of fire at night. Probably the same pillar. And so you have this opportunity in your life now to follow the Lord, but I think for a lot of us, we wish it were that simple still. So Paul says in Galatians that we're given the law like a tutor, like a child needs a little tutor to tell them what to do. But the goal of our spiritual life is not to stay children, it's to grow up. And one of the things that happens as we grow up is we get more opportunities to make choices. And so when you're training children, you're giving them little tiny choices when they're little, like which outfit do you want to wear tomorrow, the night before, if you're smart and you don't have a fight the next day. Which of these two outfits would you like to choose? Do you want to put on some of the buckles? This is my grandkids. Do you want to do some of the buckles yourself and get help on the one you can't do? Or do you want to do them all yourself? Or do you want Papa to help? So it's little choices like that. But then as they get older, it's bigger choices. You know, they're going to be making bigger decisions as they get older. We make bigger decisions. Church makes bigger decisions. And so one of the things that we sometimes don't want is what God most wants to give us, which is the opportunity to go on an adventure with him into uncertainty, into a future that we don't know where it's going. And sometimes when we want things to be so much clearer, it just betrays that we don't want to grow up. And so it's an exciting opportunity as a church in your individual life, and you may think about areas in your life where you wish things were so much clearer and you knew exactly what God wanted you to do, and you're just praying and you're wrestling and you're wondering. And so we've been talking about every time we come to the Bible that we have one foot in our own lives. What's going on in me as I interact with the Bible today? What's going on in my family? What's going on in my marriage with my kids, my grandkids, my friends, my workplace, my school? And then the other foot is in the Bible. How do people encounter God? What is he doing in their lives? What can I learn from this? So when we get into the passage we're going to get into today, it's really important to know, like, this Old Testament exists to train us into a mature relationship with God. So we've talked about three people in the Old Testament. We've been weaving their stories into the Jesus story ever since January. So this is a little pop quiz review. So the three main characters in the Old Testament that to understand their story is to understand so much of who Jesus is and what he was coming to fulfill. The first one's the father of their nation, and his name was Abraham. The second one is the one who led them out of slavery and into a covenant connection and communication and commitment with God, and his name was Moses. And the third one became a picture of a reigning king that he was going to be far superior to the Messiah, to this person, but his name was David. So we're going to see that second person show up. We're going to see Moses today. We'll see Abraham soon. So these stories are going to keep weaving into the Jesus story. And today, it would be really helpful for you to think about, where is it that you wish you had more light in your life? It could be guidance light, wisdom light. It could be clarity. It could be an area of your life where you feel like there's darkness that you're trying to experience freedom and life in, and it still feels dark. Where you go back to things that used to hold you captive. And just like God's people in the wilderness said, we want to go back to Egypt. We want to go back to the slavery we used to know. And you wish there were light just invading that area of your life. So it's understanding this context that's going to lead us into our passage today. So in Exodus 13, 21 to 22. This is New Living Translation. The Lord went ahead of them. He guided them during the day with a pillar of cloud, and he provided light at night with a pillar of fire. This allowed them to travel by day or by night. And the Lord did not remove the pillar of cloud or pillar of fire from its place in front of the people. And probably, when you add up the time frames, probably somewhere around a year and a half after the people leave Egypt, they're walking around doing training exercises. They're in boot camp. They're in, what do you call it when you're a probie in the fire department? What do you call that? You're like on probation, you're a probie. So you're learning, right? You're learning the ropes of things. So for a year and a half, God leads them on this camping trip in the wilderness and says, look, here's the deal. When the cloud moves in the daytime, follow it. When it moves at night, follow it. When it stops, stop. And camp there until it moves again. A year and a half of just training them. This is what your life's going to be like. You're going to follow me. I'm going to lead, and you're going to follow. And then he takes them to the edge of the promised land, and we looked at this on Father's Day where he tells Moses, send in 12 spies to spy out the land, see how wonderful it is, and then have them come back and give a report, and then I'm going to lead you into it. And they come back, and 10 of them say, the walls are too high, the people are too big, we're not going in. And they don't. And so that year and a half that God intended for them to wander around learning to follow him turns into a 40-year timeout where they're going to wander another 40 years like their children. And God's like, oh, man, we spent a year and a half on this already. A year and a half. And I told you, I'm going to lead you in. I'm going to keep cutting the ice. You're going to follow me. We're going to do this together. And they're like, nope, can't do it. Too hard, too big, challenges are too much, not going to do it. We don't believe you're going to be there for us. We want to go back to when we were slaves. A year and a half of training. And still they were like, nope, we're not going to trust you. So after that 40 years, they get another chance later. But this is the time when they're in training, this time when there's a light every day. So one of the things that God had them do before they went into the promised land the second time was he gave them all kinds of ways that he was going to have them experience what relationship with him was like. And he created festivals for them, 7 festivals, where during the calendar year they took time aside from their regular everyday life and they focused in an intentional way on something that they were supposed to remember. And one of them in the fall was called the Festival of Booths or Shelters or Tabernacles. It was to help them remember. You remember back in the day when I led you out of Egypt and you just followed me in the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire at night, and you had these little shelters and you just followed me and we went on a big 1.5 year camping trip. You remember that time? You remember the time, even when you rebelled against me, when I led you for another 40 years and guided you and provided for you, and every day you had manna. And we looked 2 weeks ago at I'm the bread of life. You remember that. So one of the festivals was a fall harvest festival. So they had a spring one called Pentecost, a fall one called Sukkot, like the feast of the fall feast, the fall festival, to remind themselves that their harvest had come in, that God was providing for them, that he was leading them, that they were going to go on this journey. So this is from, in Judaism, there's the written law, the Torah, especially the first 5 books of Moses, and then there's a thing called the Talmud you might have heard of, which is like the oral tradition that got passed down over the centuries. And so then later it got written down, and then rabbis started commenting on it. So this is from the oral tradition that later got written down about what God was doing with his people. And this is called the Mishnah, the written record of the oral tradition. So this is Mishnah Sukkah 5, 2 through 4. And it's describing something that happens at the feast in Jesus' day that everyone in Jesus' day would have known and experienced and seen. And if you don't know it, which most of us, we've never been to this experience, so we hear Jesus say, I'm the light of the world, and we have no context for it. So this is what happened at the end of the first day of the festival of Sukkot. At the conclusion of the first day of the festival of Sukkot in the temple, there were golden menorahs, like at Hanukkah, the candelabras. There were golden menorahs, each having 4 golden bowls on the top of them. There were 4 ladders leading to each menorah, and 4 boys from the young priests held jars of oil containing the 120 log, 10 gallons, which they poured into each one of the bowls, just massive bowls, 10-gallon bowls. From the worn-out trousers of the priests and their belts, they fashioned wicks, and with these they would light the lamps. And since these menorahs were 50 cubits, 75 feet high, on top of the Temple Mount, there was not a courtyard in Jerusalem that was not illuminated by the light. Chassidim, the holy ones, and men of good deeds would dance before them with 4 or 8 lighted torches in their hands and would sing songs and praises. And it happened all night long. So if every year you went to a festival and at the first night of this festival, they lit massive torches that just lit up all of Jerusalem in the temple. And they sang songs all night just thanking God for being their light. It would put something in your brain about how God is our light. He lights up our darkness. There's no place in our city that is not touched by this massive, fireworks display. This year I was caught off guard because we did fireworks in Woodland on the 3rd, right? Yeah, so all of a sudden I start hearing these booms. I'm like, man, there's some stuff going on in the neighborhood tonight. Like, what is happening? And I go outside and I look, and I couldn't see anything in the sky. I don't know. I'm in Spring Lake, but I couldn't see Pioneer High School. They're lighting off huge fireworks and booming forever. But in Salinas, where we moved from, there were lots and lots and lots of illegal fireworks. So what you would do is you'd go to a person's backyard in the part of town where they were going off, which was a certain part of town, and you'd go there, and people had brought so many illegal fireworks. They were lighting up the sky, and it wasn't an official fireworks show. So the fire department loved that. But anyway, the light of those fireworks would like light up the sky. It was so bright. And so these people have this experience that's engraved into their hearts, that they look forward to this every year, this reminder. So it says in John, it says, Jesus speaking in the temple at the festival of shelters, Sukkot, in the fall. So 6 months before the end of his ministry, when he's going to die for our sins and be raised from the dead. So his last time at Sukkot with his disciples, he spoke to the people once more and said, I am. And if you haven't been here, that's a reference to Moses, Exodus 3, when God sends him to lead his people out of slavery, and he says, you got the wrong guy. By the way, who are you? What's your name? What do I tell them? When I tell them God sent me, what's your name? And he says, I am, Yahweh, probably. I am who I am. I'm the eternal, self-existent one. I'm the one who never changes. So he says, I am, referring back to Exodus 3, the light of the world. I mean, one of the things about Jesus is he doesn't really leave us a lot of options. C.S. Lewis classically put it that he's like a liar, a lord, or a lunatic. You don't say you're the light of the world when that's a role that God has, unless you're lying, or you're crazy, or you really are that person who's the light of the world. So he says, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness, because you will have the light that leads to life. So when he says you won't have to walk in darkness, he's taking them back to the wilderness, where if there weren't a pillar of fire, they'd be out in the middle of nowhere, under the stars, not knowing where they're supposed to go. And every day, God gave them light with a pillar of fire, so they knew where they were and what it meant to follow him. So Jesus is taking them back to the wilderness when they were wandering around in shelters. And in this annual feast where they remember that experience, he says, by the way, you remember that fire when you were living in shelters that we're celebrating right now? I'm the light. I am that fire in the wilderness that was with your people, your ancestors. I am the self-existent one. I am, I was then, I am now, I will be. That's me. The prophet Isaiah especially has several times when he refers to the light. This is one of them. I, the Lord, have called you to demonstrate my righteousness. It's a bunch of songs written to this mysterious servant in this part of Isaiah, who is sometimes Israel and is sometimes very clearly Jesus, especially in Isaiah 53. And here's a reference that's very much fulfilled by Jesus. I, the Lord, have called you to demonstrate my righteousness. I will take you by the hand and guard you, and I will give you to my people, Israel, as a symbol of my covenant with them. And you will be a light to guide the nations, he says about this servant. You will open the eyes of the blind. You will be a light to the nations. You'll open the eyes of the blind. And so God's people have been waiting for these constant. There were several of them in Isaiah where these prophecies were made about this person who's coming, the Messiah. He's going to be a light. He's going to be a light, and he's going to lead people out of blindness. And so when Jesus shows up at this festival, where light is central to the festival, and everyone remembers going back in the wilderness, the light, the temple's lit up to remind them that he was their light. And Jesus says, I am that light. That's John 8. And it's going to lead into the second half of Isaiah's prophecy, because it's no accident what happens next that John 9 follows. So Jesus, the light of the world, is bringing light to the blind. No accident that this comes right afterwards, right after the festival. And we're going to look at this dynamic of blindness, what it means, the different kinds of blindness that we can have. So in this first instance, it says it's the blindness of judgment. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. So he's just walking with his disciples. The festival's over now, and they're just walking somewhere near Jerusalem probably. And he sees a man born blind from birth, and he looks at him. He notices him. He doesn't say anything. He just looks at him. And all the disciples go, "What's Jesus looking at?" "Oh, there's a blind man." And they ask him a really interesting question. It's one of the deepest questions that people of faith wrestle with. "Rabbi," his disciples asked him. Rabbi means teacher. "Hey, teacher, we have a question for you. We want you to teach us something. Why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins?" What an interesting question. It's the question that people of faith have been wrestling with forever, is what do we do with the problem of evil in a world where there's a loving God and life looks on the surface to be so unfair? We see people who love Jesus who go through horrendous suffering, and we see people who can't stand Jesus be blessed beyond measure in this life. And it makes us ask the question, like, why? Why? Why is life this way? And they ask him a really interesting question, that it assumes that suffering comes from sin. And if that's like infected your brain, it's a good thing to recognize that Jesus did not agree with that question. So they give him two choices. We know that he's blind because of sin. We assume that. We all agree on that, Jesus. We just want to know, is it because he sinned or his parents sinned? Whose sin is responsible for his suffering? There's got to be sin in there somewhere. Who's responsible for this? Who did the bad stuff? Who had the bad karma that brought the suffering? We want to know. And they ask him this binary question. And when you follow Jesus and you see how he works and talks to people, they often put him in these either-or situations. Is it this or this? And he goes, it's actually that. All the time he's doing this. Is it this or this? And he's like, it's that. All the time he's giving them a third option that's like they weren't even considering. So they're asking the question that religious people, one of the things we like to do to give ourselves a sense of control over suffering that may come into our future is to believe in our hearts that if we follow the rules really well and we're really, really good and we're really good religious people, that suffering won't come our way. That's one of the little tricks we play in our brain. I don't want to suffer in the future, so what I want to do is behave really well so suffering doesn't come into my life. And Jesus says, no, that's not how it works. It's not how it works. You can have a valve go bad in your heart. It doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong or your parents have. Suffering comes into our lives in unwanted ways. And when people stand on church platforms and promise you health and wealth and everything's going to be great in your life if you follow Jesus, they're not talking about the Jesus that is teaching his disciples right now, because he didn't say it works that way. He says something really interesting to them, though, about this particular guy. But before we get there, how are you not looking at people? Like when we go through life, it's so easy, especially when we see people suffering, to just avert our eyes because we don't want to get involved. It's messy getting into suffering. And I wonder, how are you just not even seeing people? Or when you see people, how are you judging them? They're going through this because of that. I don't know what that is, but I see this, so it must mean they did that. Is that something that you're going through in your brain as you analyze what people are going through in life? They did something to bring this on. And sometimes we do make choices that lead to consequences, of course. But there's no equal sign. So then we see his eyes of compassion. So he looks at this guy. They look where he's looking. They ask him this question. And then we see his eyes of compassion as he responds to their question. Whose suffering caused his blindness? It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the tasks assigned to us by the one who sent us. The night is coming and then no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am, Exodus 3, the light of the world. And then he does something really interesting. I might need to have a drink before this. He takes them to the, in science classes, there's like the lecture and the lab. So the lecture is, I'm the light of the world. Don't look at people and judge their lives and assume that their own sins or some other sins from their parents are the reason they're suffering. Don't do that. I'm the light of the world. And then he takes them to the lab. And he starts, and I'm not going to do it because some people would be grossed out. He starts like, and he starts spitting in the dirt. And he doesn't say what he's doing. He just starts spitting in the dirt. He spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva. Interesting. This could be something you can do at home as homework. Field experience. You could get over some dirt and see how long it takes you to spit enough to make mud that will cover 2 eyes. That could be your little homework assignment after church. You go in your backyard, spit on some dirt, see how long it takes you. I didn't do my own homework, but I would guess it's going to be a good 5-10 minutes. If you don't bring water with you and you just keep using water, if you're just using your saliva, you got it. Well, especially in Sacramento. Does anybody knows how dry it is here? So and he's in Israel, it's dry there. He's got to get enough spit to make mud to cover both eyes of this guy. So this is a long, long lab with no talking. They're just watching him, hawking up loogies into the dirt. What is he doing? This guy, I swear, we never know what he's doing. We ask the simplest questions. He doesn't answer them, and then he starts spitting on stuff. And we just got to sit here and watch him spit for 5 or 10 minutes. We don't know where this is going. Said he's the light of the world, and now he's just spitting in the dirt. And it's never ending. Oh, now he's gonna pick some of them up. He gets it in his hands. He makes mud. And really, this is kind of a picture of Genesis 2, where God takes the dirt and makes a person. It's a picture of that we're made from the elements of the universe. So he makes mud with the saliva. He spreads the mud over the blind guy's eyes. By the way, it doesn't say he asked the guy. The guy hasn't even spoken yet. Jesus is walking near him. He's looking at him, and his disciples ask him this question that brings shame into his soul. They ask it in his presence. He's sitting right there. And they say, tell us who made this guy blind, his own sins or his parents? And he's like, great. Another day, just living in the judgment of other people. I love this life I got. I'm just trying to beg for some money to get through the day, and people come heaping their shame and judgment on me. Great. Then he hears what Jesus says, that it's for the glory of God. It's not because he sinned or his parents sinned. And something awakens inside of him. Maybe there's something more to my life than relying on judgmental people's fake generosity the rest of my life. And then he starts hearing a man spitting. For 5 or 10 minutes. He's just sitting there with his little basket or whatever he collects his generosity that people leave little coins in it. And he's just sitting there. No one's talking. He's just listening to a man spit. And then he starts hearing the sound of liquid and dirt being rolled together. And then all of a sudden, someone's touching him and putting things on his eyes. And I have to imagine it was a little awkward for him. No one's explaining what's going on. He's blind. And Jesus starts covering his eyes with mud. And then he tells him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. And Siloam means sent. So he goes, go to Sent. I'm sending you to Sent. Now he has a choice. People he hasn't seen come up and ask judgmental question. A guy who seems like the leader of the group says, no, it's for the glory of God. He starts spitting, makes mud, puts it on his eyes, says, go to this pool that means sent. I'm sending you there, and go wash your eyes off. So if you're him, you now have a choice to make. Am I going to listen to this guy I've never seen, who told me there's something that God's going to get glory from in my suffering that I've been through in my entire life? That there might be some way that God gets glory through this disability I didn't ask for? And we don't know how he gets to the pool of Siloam. I don't think he asked the disciples for help. Somebody helped him get there. Or he just starts wandering off and say, can you guide me to the pool? Can you guide me to the pool? So he goes and he decides to trust Jesus and follow him and do what he says. So he goes and washes, and he comes back seeing. One of the most interesting times I've seen this passage used in real life, Katie and I were on a missions trip in southern Mexico in the state of Oaxaca. And so it was Manos de Ayuda, it was Hands of Help. So they would bring in ophthalmologists who would come in like several times a year, donate their time, come into this clinic in Oaxaca, and little tiny Indian men and women, older people from the mountains, were brought there by family members. And they had cataracts so severe they couldn't see. And they felt like burdens to their family because, like this man, he couldn't work anymore. Well, he never was able to. He couldn't provide for himself. People judged him all the time. And so these little abuelas and abuelos, the grandmas and grandpas coming down from the mountains, somehow getting there on animals, on foot, walking a long ways, many of them. And they would come to this clinic, and an American doctor would do I'm trying to remember, 30 or 40 surgeries in one day, cataract surgeries. Now, in America, we just take for granted, even the poorest here can get cataract surgeries. But there was no way for these people to get cataract surgeries unless someone came and brought the surgery to them. So they had this mobile clinic they'd set up. Nurses, doctor, come down. And they would do one eye, because if you can see with one eye, you can get through life. And you can then do things again and serve your family and be a blessing to them. So they would do one eye. So we go the day that they do the surgery, and we see all these people with one very opaque eye and one with a bandage over it. And they describe what they're doing, and then we go do some other ministry things, and we're just learning about the ministry they do there. And then 2 days later, we come back, and we take turns taking off the bandage and having people who haven't seen for a long time see again. And this passage came to life for me, seeing someone who was blind 2 days ago, and now they can see. And the joy that came over their faces, the thing I just take for granted every day that I can see. I'm looking at you. You know this feeling, what that would be like. The feelings of joy that came over these people's faces. And to have something that I just take for granted every day that I can wake up and I'll see. To see people have something that they can't take for granted restored. And then a pastor got up and read this passage to them and talked about how it was that Jesus was the one leading these doctors and nurses to donate their time and come down here and do surgeries for people they've never met so that they could see again. And it was a way that they could give like Jesus gave to people. They didn't have the ability to do a miracle and heal them in that way, but they were able to use their medical skills to restore their sight and they talked about how God led these people here. There's a reason why you were able to come, that you live close enough to come to this clinic. It's not an accident. God's at work in your life, and we want to tell you about the Jesus who loves you. It was just a beautiful experience I'll never forget. But when we're looking at people through the eyes of compassion, we just see things differently. I loved Thursday. It was really cool just to, I know some of us are feeling today, Donald and Jessica, like we said goodbye last night, and Thursday night there was a group that showed up to move them. And by the way, if you ever want someone to help you move, get Brian and Lisa. They're moving beasts, amazing. Larry's doing the Tetris with Brian inside the truck. I saw all the stuff had to go in this truck. I'm like, there's no way it's going in. That's me. I'm a big faith guy. I'm like, this isn't going to work. And it all fit in. I couldn't believe it. It's amazing. And I got to lift a mattress with Rocio Jr., who's very strong, by the way, I learned. So, but it was just really neat to see this church family show up, you know. Anna Maria was there, others I'm not thinking of in the moment, but it was just really neat to see a church family show up for people going through a big transition, and to see people show up and just give some time and love and energy and compassion to help someone in the midst of a difficult time. It was really neat to see yesterday, you know, our church show up, and Bill, I know, had the point role on that, but so many people showing up to help and just do different things to be a blessing to the community. Just to say, we see you. We see you with eyes of compassion. We love you. We want to be available to you. You're welcome here anytime. Please come back, you know, another time as well. But just to look at our community with eyes of compassion, to look at our family with eyes of compassion, our friends, just different people that God puts in our life. So I wonder, what tasks of compassion has God assigned to you right now? Where is there someone that you're able to see that God's just putting on your heart, like, I'm supposed to look at them, and I'm supposed to, like Jesus, notice them, not just walk by, notice them in their need, and I'm supposed to do something about it, whatever that might be. So I wonder, what tasks of compassion has God assigned to you right now? So another kind of blindness is deferring to religious authority. So we were going to see a lot of different responses. And like I said, 1 foot in our story, looking at our own hearts, 1 foot in the Bible story. And in this story, we're going to see lots of different kinds of responses to what's going on in this situation with this guy. Different kinds of blindness. So this is the blindness of deferring to religious authority. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, "Isn't this the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said he was. Others said, "No, he just looks like him." You've heard of doppelgangers. Like, must be his doppelganger, because the dude we know can't see. This guy can see. Like, that can't be him. But the beggar kept saying, "Yes, I'm the same one." And they asked, "Who healed you? What happened?" He told them, "The man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, 'Go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself.' So I went and washed, and now I can see." "Where is he now?" they asked. "I don't know." Then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees, because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud and healed him. One of the constant conflicts, and it shows up in this story all through Jesus' ministry, is that human beings took God's commandments, and one of them, one of the big 10, top 10, was to keep the Sabbath holy. And so, with good intentions, what human beings did was they said, well, we don't want to break God's law, so let's put a lot of other laws around that law so that we don't accidentally break the law. So let's make sure that we honor the law by putting a big giant hedge of other laws around it. So when someone wakes up, well, it starts Friday night, a Jewish way of thinking, the day begins at sundown, what we think of as the day before. So Friday night, they don't have to wonder, like, how much can I cook today? How many steps can I take? Can I get the eggs from my chicken? How far can the egg be away from my house? What am I allowed to do to help people? So one of the things Jesus is constantly encountering is all these rules that human beings have put around God's law. They made their own laws. They put it around there, and then they made sure that everybody kept their laws, the human-made laws that were around God's law. So they had rules for everything, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rules about how to keep the Sabbath. And you had to go ask the rabbi because nobody could memorize them all. Like, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to do this? And Jesus encounters this constantly. What Jesus is like, he's personally, purposefully healing people on the Sabbath more than any other day. You just see it all through the Gospels. He's like, okay, I'm going to cause a ruckus today. I'm going to heal people on the Sabbath and make people really mad. And so if you ever wonder, like, if it's okay to do things that honor God that make other people angry, just look at Jesus. He's constantly making people mad, constantly. Because he kept breaking their man-made laws to follow God's law. And God's law is basically, there's two things we're called to do ultimately when you boil it down. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so Jesus would point out, like, if the 8th day when you're supposed to circumcise a kid falls on the Sabbath, what do you guys do? Well, we circumcise them. Why? Well, because that's a bigger commandment. Okay. If somebody's ox falls in a ditch, do you just let it die in the ditch? No, we pull it out. So you'll save an animal but not a person? You're not supposed to do it on the Sabbath, Jesus. But you do. You're not supposed to do it on the Sabbath. So now these guys are, in the hood, snitches get stitches. So these guys are snitches. They're like, we're going to take this guy to the Pharisees. We're going to take him to the Pharisees and let them deal with it. Because he's doing stuff on the Sabbath. We don't know all the rules, but we don't think this is kosher, pun intended. So they bring him to the Pharisees. So I wonder, how are you not engaged with what's going on right now, or leaving things up to religious leaders? Like, sometimes we get into situations where we defer responsibility for us following God by just saying, well, people in authority tell me everything I need to know, instead of me learning and leaning on God. So how are you maybe leaving things up to other people instead of listening to the voice of the Spirit? Then there's the blindness of mistrust, the Pharisees. The Pharisees asked the man all about it. So he told them, he put the mud over my eyes, and when I wash it away, I could see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man Jesus is not from God, for he is working on the Sabbath. We think there's a law about how many spits you can do and how much mud you can make on the Sabbath. We'll have to look it up later, but it doesn't sound right. And others said, but how could an ordinary sinner do miraculous signs? So there was a deep division of opinion among them. Then the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, what's your opinion about the man who healed you? The man replied, I think you must be a prophet. The Jewish leaders still refused to believe the man had been blind and could now see, so they called in his parents. So the mistrust of being able to see God at work. We think he violated one of our human rules. Then there's the blindness of fear that the parents have. This is a big one for us. The Pharisees asked the parents, is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he now see? And his parents replied, we know this is our son and that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He's old enough to speak for himself. So his parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders, who would announce that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, he's old enough, ask him. One of the things that we most fear is exclusion. And so we often do things to fit in and be liked rather than be courageous. So his parents are like, they know it's him. They know he was healed. They know Jesus did it. Don't know that they saw it, but they know. But they don't want to get involved because it's been said, we'll expel you from the synagogue. To be expelled from the synagogue wasn't just like go to the next synagogue down the street like modern American church. People get kicked out of one church, they go to another church. It's not like that. You get expelled from your synagogue, you're not going to the only place of worship in your town. Like everyone is going to treat you like a second-class citizen. You're going to be with the sinners and the prostitutes and everyone who's socially unwelcome. You're going to be excluded and shunned. It's going to have horrible relational consequences on you. People aren't going to hire you for work anymore. Your life is going to be going downhill in a hurry because of the social exclusion. It's no little thing that they use this threat. They know what the threat means. People don't want to give up their relationships, their sense of fitting in, their place of knowing that everything's okay, that they have a social support network. You go through a hard time and you're banned, excluded, excommunicated, no one's going to come help you. So they have every reason to be afraid. It would have taken tremendous courage to act otherwise. But I think when we look at their lives, we say, well, they should have done what was hard. They should have said, this is our son, it's a miracle, and we're praising God. So I wonder, how's the fear of others keeping you from following Jesus more? What are you afraid of that other people might do to you were you to follow Jesus? Then there's the blindness of exclusion, round 2 with the Pharisees. So for the second time, they call on the man who had been blind and told him, God should get the glory for this because we know this man, Jesus, is a sinner. Now, mind you, this guy has just had a stranger spit in the mud, put mud on his eyes, tell him to go wash them, come back, he can see. He doesn't really know much about the guy except he just healed me. There must be something special about him. So he says, I don't know whether he's a sinner, the man replied, but I know this. I was blind and now I can see. I love that. I love that. One of the most powerful things we can do in our relationships is just share our story. It's not our job to argue or convince someone into the kingdom or into following Jesus. It's just our job to be in touch with what he's done in our life and say, this is what he did for me. I was dealing with this, and he gave me grace to walk through this. I was filled with this, and now he's delivering me. I was here, and now I'm there. And it's the most powerful thing. No one can argue with your experience. So just give up the need to try to push people into the kingdom or convince people into the kingdom or argue them into the kingdom, and just say, hey, my job is just to be a witness. I'm just going to bear witness to what I've experienced. This is what I know. This is what happened to me. You do with that what you want, but this is my story. What did he do, they asked. How did he heal you? Look, the man exclaimed, I told you once, didn't you listen? Why don't you want to hear it again? He's a little bolder than his parents. Why? Do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Oh, those fighting words. Those are fighting words. They just said he was a horrible sinner. He's like, you want to become his followers too? Disciple means learner, apprentice. You want to start learning from him too? You want to apprentice yourself to this rabbi? But we are disciples of Moses. Again, Abraham, Moses, David. We are speaking on the authority of Moses. We know his laws and his rules and everything we're supposed to do to honor God. We know God spoke to Moses, but we don't even know where this man comes from. Why, that's very strange, the man replied. I mean, the sarcasm just dripping. Oh, he healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from? We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. You were born a total sinner, they answered. Are you trying to teach us? And they threw him out of the synagogue. So now he's experienced what his parents were so afraid of. He's banned, he's excluded, he's persona non grata, he's a nobody. He's been marked. Do not be with this person. And then we see this amazing experience of this man who risks everything to follow Jesus, the little bit he knows about him, the side of faith and worship. When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man. So he knows his life has just, like, in one sense, gotten infinitely better because he can see, but infinitely worse because he is socially a pariah now. He is excluded, shunned, rejected. Everyone will be pushing him away now. And Jesus comes next to him in that situation. He found the man and asked, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" Which is a title from Daniel and his prophecy about this one that's coming. It was Jesus' favorite term about himself because it's kind of vague. And it let people decide for themselves. Are you the Son of Man from Daniel? Are you just a human being? Who are you? He says, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man answered, "Who is he, sir? I want to believe in him." "You have seen him," Jesus said, "and he is speaking to you." "Yes, Lord, I believe," the man said, and he worshiped Jesus. Now, if you are a Jew, it has been drilled into you from the moment of your birth. You heard it in the womb that there is one God. Hear, O Israel, there is one God. God is one. And so he is now worshiping someone who is appearing before him as a human being. This is one of the highest confessions. Like, Jesus' disciples didn't get to where this guy got till after he came back resurrected. And Thomas bowed down before him. We looked at that a few weeks ago, and he said, "My Lord and my God," and he worshiped Jesus. His own disciples didn't get where this guy got already. He barely even knows who Jesus is. So sometimes we need to make space for someone just brand new in faith. Might be farther ahead of us in trusting Jesus than we are, and we need to learn from new people. I love being around new Christians. They haven't been told all the things they're not supposed to try yet, not supposed to believe yet, not supposed to hope for. So he worships Jesus. Are you currently putting your trust in Jesus and worshiping him? And then there's the blindness of self-delusion. Jesus told him, "I entered the world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and to those who think they see that they are blind." So some Pharisees are standing nearby, and Jesus didn't say it quietly, purposely entering into conflict with these religious leaders. Some Pharisees who were standing nearby heard him and asked, "Are you saying we're blind?" In common paraphrase, "You talking to us, bro? You talking about us? Are you saying we're blind?" In the parentheses, I think my translation would be, Jesus said, "Did I stutter?" "If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty," Jesus replied, "but you remain guilty because you claim you can see." You claim you can see. It's always a mark of spiritual growth to be deeply in touch, still, even if we've been walking with Jesus for a long time, still with the blindness that we used to be in and the blindness that's still inside of us that's getting healed. It's always a good thing to be in touch with that. Because when we think we see and everything's clear and we know it all and we don't need anyone to teach us anything, we're in the most dangerous place of blindness there is. So it's always good to be deeply in touch. I was blind. There's still blindness in me. I'm being healed of my blindness. One day I will see completely as I'm supposed to. I'm in process. So I just want to give you a moment to respond to Jesus in this story. Put yourself back in this story. Where are you finding yourself? Where are you finding yourself? How are you responding to him these days? Where was a moment where the Spirit just sort of whispered to you, this is what's happening inside of you right now? And if you have yet to begin a relationship with Jesus, if you're here in person, if you're online, and you want to begin a relationship with Jesus, it starts just where this guy started. Here's my blindness, Jesus. I want to see spiritually. I want to be healed. Will you heal me of my sin? Heal me of my independence, my pride, my brokenness? Would you just take me as I am? Would you forgive me and change me and then lead me on a process of forgiving and changing me the rest of my life until I'm with you? And it doesn't have to be certain words. You just say it in your own words. Jesus, I want to see. I want to follow you. I want to be healed. So I'm going to give you a moment just to speak back to him in some way that he has spoken to you. Jesus, we thank you that you are one who pauses to look at us. You see us. You don't see us to bring judgment. You see us to invite us to sight. Thank you for giving us the grace to believe. For each one who's already believed, may they just sense more deeply how wonderful it is to have been blind and now to see. For those who are still on their way, help them to keep looking at you. Keep putting themselves in the story. Keep asking, is this the one I want to follow? And thank you for the chance to put ourselves into your story, God, to be your people on a journey following you. When the path is unclear, when we're not sure exactly where we're going, to believe that you have a way that you're leading us toward, to trust you, that you're giving us enough light for that day's steps. Not a year from now, not even a month, nor a week. You're giving us enough light for today to do the things we're supposed to do today. Amen. And about 6 months later, Jesus gathered at Passover and took that festival, the festival of unleavened bread. And he took two of the elements of that festival that his people had been celebrating for 1,400 years. And he took the unleavened bread and he broke it, passed it around to his disciples. And as we looked at a couple of weeks ago, he made this statement in his ministry, I'm the bread of life. And so when he passed that bread out that day, what he was saying to them is, my body, my death is going to give you life. My life is going to give you life. And so he told them to take the bread and eat to remind themselves that he's their life. And then he took one of the cups of wine and said, this blood. And in the Old Testament, the life was in the blood. This blood, this life is mine, and I'm giving it to you. I want you to have life, my life. So take and drink my life.